Larry Tempa said, even if one whom I have helped and in whom I have great hopes, instead irrationally causes harm, may I regard this one as my spiritual guide. Furthermore, ungrateful people are naturally of bad character and accumulate intense evil, even when I have helped and have great hopes upon them and helped with all of my effort. For example, whenever we nurture certain Dharma teachers and whenever we try to nurture someone to become a Dharma teacher, after years and years of such kinds of help, bestowing great hopes and cultivating great relationships, but this person, out of no reason, really not irrational causes, this person create harm upon us. At that time, we should treat this person as a spiritual guide. For one that has naturally endowed with bad characters and accumulated intense evil, perceiving all those ungrateful people who are oppressed with great suffering as rare objects of love, one should come to regard them as precious. We should treat such kind of people wholeheartedly, with great compassion. We should regard them as the object of loving compassion. In the 8 verses of Training the Mind, it continued to say that when seeing sentient beings of bad character who are oppressed by fierce evil and suffering, may I cherish them, for this is as rare as the discovery of a treasury of jewels. Whenever we see sentient beings with great suffering and with lots of negativity, with lots of devious or vice actions, we should cherish them because this is rare. Normally, whenever we encounter people, at least they would have some kinds of advantages. But over here it says that this particular person that have no strength whatsoever in the character, rather would cause great harm to you, to this lifetime as well as future lifetimes. Then as genuine Mahayana practitioner, we should regard this sentient being as really poor beings and very rare to encounter because they are great objects to practice our loving compassion. In Larangar, we practice the Lamrim and 37 practices of Bodhisattva, as well as the 8 verses of Training One's Mind. These 3 are the three essential short texts that everyone has to recite. Especially, I hope those of you who are in the mind training classes, you need to not only understand it, you need to practice it. We should not treat these kinds of people with impatience and feeling that they're irritating. Rather, we should treat them as wish-fulfilling jewels. In the mundane being's mindset, of course, we would feel that it's very difficult. But for those of you who are great practitioners, who are bodhisattvas, who aspire for true bodhicitta, then you should be able to accept whatever is difficult to accept for mundane beings. There are people that's very courageous in taking on responsibilities that others just don't have courage to do so, just as the crows that's very courageous when they see a dead snake, but does not dare to come close to the snake that's alive and fierce. So for the bodhisattvas, why the bodhisattvas are called warriors? It is because at the most difficult times of the sentient beings, when the sentient beings are going through the most fears, afflictions, the Bodhisattvas has courage to liberate them and to benefit them. Chakawa also said, though damage may be done in return for help, cultivate a great compassion in return for even that. The sublime beings of this world respond with goodness even towards the return of evil. Also, always meditate on the most volatile situation. Focus especially on that which presents difficulties for mind training, people who cause harm in return for your benefits, hateful enemies, obstacle makers, and competitors, and then cultivate a special loving kindness for those. It means that we need to specifically separate the ones that has created harm to you, the ones that, for example, created obstacles and they were your oppositions and so on and so forth. We need to practice compassion to them and then rededicate merit to them specifically. For example, nowadays, if we get sick and if there's some kinds of non-human spirits or obstructive forces that's creating illness to you, then you need to practice and rededicate merit to that particular spirit so that your practice can be helpful to that particular spirit. Or whomsoever created enemy, whomsoever is your enemy and created obstacles to you, then you need to separate them out of the crowds and then rededicate the merit to them. And it's very difficult to do. Whenever we practice rededication of merit, we rededicate it to our parents, our benefactor, our beloved teacher, the people who have good relationship with us, so that they don't get sick and they enjoy all kinds of favorable conditions and so on and so forth. Especially we rededicate it to ourselves so that we can enjoy all kinds of favorable conditions. But today, what we've learned here is that whatever the kinds of rededication is, you need to dedicate it to the humans and non-humans that creates obstacles to you. At the rededication of merit today, I wish that you can contemplate on it and practice in such a way. This is the practice of loving kindness. Moreover, Gyaltse Tongme himself said, the one who cause harm to myself and to my interest or do harm to the teaching and to all beings, those who have harmed, who are harming myself as well as all my relatives and loved ones, and even harming the Dharma teachings. I think when it comes to the harmful actions to Dharma teachings, as Buddhists, we would feel really irritated. And then even lots of people, after heard that some of the monasteries or some so and so would create obstacles to some dharmic projects or destruction of the monasteries and so on, many people would start chanting the vicious mantras, hoping such person would encounter lots of obstacles. But Gyaltse Tongme is not like that at all. Rather, he says that when I remember, hear, or see these wrongful people, I understand them to be superior objects of compassion. Hence, through praising and honoring them and speaking pleasing words, I must benefit them directly where I can. And where I can't, it is important that I, with fierce love and compassion, dedicate to them all virtue and happiness, however much I possess. The more the others would harm you, the more you rededicate the merit to them. Sometimes if the other person were to harm the ones that you love and the ones that you cherish, you need to rededicate merit to them. And sometimes if such kind of person were to create harm to the Sangha, to Dharma, to any of the sentient beings, it is indeed that that person would reap the bitter fruit for their vice actions. That is why we need to rededicate merit to them so that they can enjoy happiness. In the memorandum of the preliminary practices, it says that there's the general rededication of merit and then there's the specific rededication of merit. For example, at the time of chanting the rededication chants of the aspiration of Samadabhadra, then you can rededicate it to the ones that has created great harm to you, let it be humans or non-humans. They are the object of your rededication of the merit that you've accumulated from your study of the Dharma, from the mantras you've chanted, and from the chanting of over 10,000 of chantings of Bodhisattva. Nowadays, I'm sure everyone's really busy and having all kinds of accumulation of merits, such as merits of having the different kinds of enjoyment, such as meals and the dim sums and hot pots and whatever kinds of merits that you enjoy, you can rededicate it to them, especially the merits accumulated by chanting the Samadabhadra's aspiration. People we had great hopes in may deceive us and may inflict harm in return for our help. If we do not give rise to compassion and altruism toward them, our mind is not trained. Therefore, we must especially meditate upon those. Accordingly, Gyaltse Togme made this his main practice. Whenever we would look at great practice of Gyaltse Togme, we indeed would rejoice in his practice and his teachings. Each and every of his teachings is his essential instructions. If we can chant it and read it very often, indeed, true compassion can generate from your mind stream. Though we cannot do it right now, though we cannot practice it right now, but we need to realize that eventually we will be able to do it. So we need to consider that though we cannot do it right away, but when we are more matured, I vow to practice in such a way to transform humiliation, to transform obstacles and suffering, all kinds of these adversities onto the path of practice. At the end of each of the teachings, it also says that Gyaltse Togme made this his main practice.
Jirgana jiralon chebayi, jabum sonen droa drosho.